and Murray Walker.
And at Estoril, the weather is absolutely perfect for the 14th round of the 1993 World Championship, where Alain Prost could indeed become world champion for the 4th time in his distinguished career. But I said that in Monza 2 weeks ago, and there's the man who could stop him, Damon Hill, because for the 2nd time, Damon is starting from pole position this season. Yesterday, actually, when he got his pole position, he wasn't totally happy with the car, but he went out and worked on it in the half-hour warm-up period 4 hours ago. He was fastest in that, and he was some 0.3 of a second faster than number 2, his teammate Alain Prost, who's starting on the front row of the grid with him, and Damon expressed absolute delight with the car. Ayrton Senna, who's sitting behind Prost, went off very heavily in the warm-up, hit the Armco, coming out of the corner at about 160 miles an hour, but was perfectly all right, got out, walked back to the pits, which was a very short walk, and got into the spare car and became 3rd fastest in the warm-up. But we're also going to be watching, and that is Damon Hill stuck on the grid. Now he's got to get going. My goodness, this is an astounding development. It's exactly the same thing as happened to Damon Hill as happened to Alain Prost earlier this season. He has failed to get away from the grid, and that means to say that he's going to have to start last. He's going to have to drive round, if they get his car going, and take up his position at the rear of the grid, which means to say that Alain Prost automatically assumes what will in effect be pole position. But significantly then, Mika Häkkinen, the young Finnish driver in the McLaren, who you can see just behind Alain Prost now, will move up to 2nd in the grid, and Häkkinen, as the unfortunate Damon Hill gets away to take up his position at the rear of the grid, cruel luck. Häkkinen has been nothing short of sensational in practice. He's replaced Michael Andretti and really shown the American up, because Häkkinen starts 3rd on the grid. He was 2nd in one of the sessions, and he has demonstrated complete commitment and the most complete mastery of the McLaren Ford, which of course he has been testing all year and knows just as well as Senna does, and considerably better than Andretti did. So Häkkinen in with a shout right from the start of the race. Damon Hill has got an enormous amount to do, but remember how Damon Hill at Monza clawed his way back from 9th on the first lap after he'd had that coming together with Ayrton Senna, and finished in 1st for the 3rd race in succession. But now up to that solid white line across the course, behind which is the position for Alain Prost to line up his car. Effectively now in pole position. The sad white line to his right, as you look at the screen, is where Damon Hill would have been. Behind Prost is Senna, and Mika Häkkinen has got a clear run down to the 1st corner, and if Prost is tardy, getting away from the start as he has been this season before, getting started is not his forte, or hasn't been this season. That man that you're looking at, Mika Häkkinen, number 7 from Espoo in Finland, could be in the lead of a Grand Prix for the 1st time in his career. However, there's a lot to happen yet. This race is going to be over 71 laps. That's 192 miles, as near as makes very little difference in Portugal. It's about 22 degrees here. You can see that there's quite a stiff breeze blowing, but that's considerably better than it was, as poor Damon Hill lines up at the back of the grid. There is the green, which says that the Portuguese Grand Prix is almost go. Watch for the green. Prost has got away well, but so has Mika Häkkinen. And Prost is being crowded as he goes into the corner, and it's Jean Alesi in the Ferrari who has blasted through. From 5th on the grid, he leads Häkkinen, and Senna has got ahead of Prost, who is now down to 4th position. And the amazing Jean Alesi, the most forceful driver in Grand Prix racing, leads for Ferrari for the 1st time this season, and for the 1st time for a very, very long time too. Now, this is a real surprise. because Jean Alesi was not all that quick in the warm-up. In fact, he was 13th and he had very bad understeer, but they've obviously dialed that out. So Senna is through into second position now. Down to third position goes Häkkinen, who will be able to watch his team leader, who chases Jean Alesi. In fourth position, it is Alain Prost. In fifth position, it's one of the Benettons, and they have been in dreadful trouble. It's Schumacher. And then there's a gap before in sixth place it is Riccardo Patrese. And incidentally, the Benettons have had dreadful trouble here. They haven't been able to get their car set up properly. Sixth behind Schumacher now is Gerhard Berger in the second Ferrari. I'm glad to say that his damaged elbow is much better. Through to the end of lap 1 with 70 to go, and it is Alesi leading Senna, Ferrari leading McLaren, Häkkinen is third, Prost is fourth, right behind him is Schumacher. Then there's a gap before Gerhard Berger in the sixth position, followed by Mark Blundell is seventh, Patrese is eighth, Brundle is in ninth position, Carl Wendlinger is 10th, and the Saubers went extremely well in the warm-up because J.J. Leto was fourth fastest, Carl Wendlinger was seventh fastest, and Senna is challenging for the lead. We're with him now. We have cameras on Senna's car and Häkkinen's car, and on the Ferraris and the Benettons and the two Lotus cars, one of which is being driven by local hero Pedro Lamy, the Portuguese Formula 3000 driver. So, lap 2. And Senna can probably sense victory already because he's going to make it very difficult for Alain Prost to get past him. But something that we haven't mentioned so far is that tyres, as ever, are going to be a very real factor here in Portugal.
Yes, I think so, Murray. We've got a new surface, actually, at this Estoril circuit. 75% of the track's being resurfaced. That's made it a little bit easier on tyres, but we will be seeing, I'm quite sure, a pit stop from every competitor between lap 25 and lap 30, probably, watching Alesi there. And I think we can expect to see his lead to be relatively short-lived. Tremendous start from Alesi there, because that Ferrari is running quite considerably heavier, probably 25 kilos heavier than the McLarens at the moment. It has this relatively powerful engine now. The new 4-valve Ferrari engine is better, but it does still use a lot of fuel, and that means the car has to start with more fuel. It makes it heavier, and Alesi's going to have to be careful not to really destroy his tyres, whereas Senna there has a lighter, probably better balanced car, and it's a question of time before he can get by. The main overtaking point is only, though, at the end of that main straight. It's a difficult place to get by at, and I'm sure Alesi will defend his position very well indeed. The Ferrari top speed is pretty good. He's quicker than Senna in a straight line, and that's going to help him.
And so, now, coming out of turn 6, which is one of the slower corners, about 70 miles an hour here, they accelerate up to 165. This is turn 7, Jean Alesi leading the Ferrari. Starts the climb now, up to turn 8, another right-hander, which he's into. Then turns 9 and 10, right and left, which lead into the 4.8G, 135 mile an hour, long right-hander, which really stresses the driver's neck muscle. They exited at 165, which is where Ayrton Senna went off, and into another lap goes Jean Alesi, and Ferrari have now led for 3 laps in Portugal, and they're creating history in 1993 with Ayrton Senna, I think, just holding a watching brief.
Yes, I think so. You could see that what Ayrton Senna needed to do was to get right up behind Alesi in that last corner. If he's not close enough, he'll stand no chance of getting in the tow, in the slipstream, and pulling out alongside to try and outbrake Alesi up the inside. But, you know, Alesi, he's a fit. Now, here's the start again. Yeah, and actually a cracking start from Häkkinen too. But look how he squeezes onto Prost. He's some pretty robust driving there from Häkkinen, actually. I don't think Prost will be over-impressed with that, but Alesi, meanwhile, comes around the outside, and going around the outside of another driver into the first corner is pretty remarkable. But I think great credit to Häkkinen. This is the first Grand Prix start the man has done. His qualifying performance has been quite exceptional, and he's kept his calm. He let Senna go through when clearly Senna was all over the back of him. It was the right thing to do. Without any question, it would have blotted his copybook had he had any kind of wheel-banging session with his teammates so early on.
Lap 4 out of 71. Alesi leads Senna, and you can see the distance that he leads him by as they exit the last corner of the lap. Behind them is Häkkinen, then Prost, Schumacher, Berger. Where is Damon Hill, I hear you asking? The answer is he's 15th, or was on the previous lap. He started 26th. He immediately moved up to 18th place. and with John Alesi leading on lap 5 as they go into turn 1, down to turn 3 and on to the third right-hander. Damon Hill has passed Rubens Barrichello's Jordan. He's up into 14th. He's on the tail now of Johnny Herbert's Lotus. Then he's got to pass Leto, Warwick, Wendlinger, Brundle, Patrese, Blundell, Berger, Schumacher and Prost and Hakkinen before he's in the top 3. And he's going to have a struggle when he catches Gerhard Berger, who is in 6th position.
Yes, apparently Damon Hill just stalled the car on that green flag lap. No further problems, and indeed his pace indicates there are no further problems. Obviously immensely frustrating there for Hill. It should provide us with some pretty good entertainment as he forges his way past on a circuit which is difficult to overtake on. This is what we call a medium speed circuit. Top speed is about 195 miles an hour at the end of that circuit, at the end of the main straight. Now actually here is where Senna needs to be right up with Alesi now. This corner was absolutely flat out in qualifying. 150 now, 160, 170, into 6th gear. He's got to get right in that toe. There's going to be immense buffeting in that cockpit, but he's still not close enough.
No, that's another lap completed, and this is marvellous to see a Ferrari in the lead, and not just for a few moments, because now John Alesi is on his 6th lap. He's not very far off 1/10 race distance. Mika Hakkinen just keeping out of the buffeting from Senna's McLaren in front of him. McLaren 2nd and 3rd. The Woking team have had 4 days of testing since Monza. They've improved the car considerably. That's shown by the fact that both Senna and Hakkinen were in front of the Benettons of Michael Schumacher and Riccardo Patrese. And as you can see, Alain Prost is in 4th position, almost tucked up under the rear wing of Hakkinen's McLaren.
What you can also see is just how much Alesi is actually holding up the flow of traffic behind him. He's got Senna 2/10 behind, Hakkinen, Prost, Schumacher. There's barely a second in the whole lot. They are all being held up behind Alesi, and I think there's a very good chance that he can continue to do that for quite some time, because, you know, it doesn't seem to me as if Senna can really get anything like close enough to have a good crack at him.
Yes, this race already puts me in mind of that great Spanish Grand Prix at Jarama, where Gilles Villeneuve, in coincidentally a Ferrari, which didn't handle as well as the other cars, but had the grunt to stay ahead where he could get the speed up, stayed in front for the whole race, and about 1 second covered the first 4 or 5 home at the end of the race, and the winner was Gilles Villeneuve. Well, Gilles Villeneuve is Jean Alesi's hero. Alesi has modelled himself on the brilliant French-Canadian, and he's leading on lap 7. Now, this is the 1/10 distance lap of the Portuguese Grand Prix. Alesi leads, Senna 2nd, Hakkinen 3rd, Prost just behind them. Then it's Schumacher, Berger, Brundle is 7th, Patrese is in 8th position, Wendlinger is 9th, Warwick is... from Wendlinger's 10th, and Damon Hill is up into 12th position, behind Derek Warwick.
Now, as and when Senna can get alongside Alesi, he should be in a good position to overtake, because for the first time this weekend, McLaren are running a powered brake system. They can adjust the level of assistance they need, but it has, I think, been a benefit. We've seen the odd locking wheel from McLaren that we haven't seen before because of the increased power of those brakes. Now, here again is a critical point. This is where Senna really needs to be right up behind Alesi. But one of the problems the cars have is that the closer they get around this long corner, they lose the grip from the front of the car, because those front wings get into dirty air behind the Alesi's Ferrari, and that causes the front to wash out wide. They don't have the grip, and that's why he can't get close enough.
And you can see Michael Schumacher now right up behind Alain Prost, and it looks to me as though the changes that the Benetton team have made to their car right up to a few seconds before the race started have been beneficial, because Schumacher now in 5th position. You're looking at him now, the yellow and green car is behind Alain Prost. So it's Ferrari leading, McLaren 2nd and 3rd. The Williams is 4th of Alain Prost. 5th is Schumacher in the Benetton. Then Gerhard Berger, and he is about 7 seconds behind Schumacher. Berger in 6th position. Then Blundell and Riccardo Patrese.
And we've got Damon Hill now, who's just set the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 18.8. He's up to 11th place, closing fast. And undoubtedly, the fact that Alesi is holding up this pure traffic behind him is good news at the moment for Damon. It's meaning that the pace behind is not too much. And indeed, it may well be that we still don't know yet about the performance of Schumacher's Benetton. I'm far from convinced it has improved, because we are really running this race, or the race is being run at Alesi's pace. And that hasn't been anything like the sort of pace that the McLaren cars and the Williams cars have been capable of. So I think until we get some clear space, until Lacey is overtaken, or indeed he should pit, until then we will not know what the true front-running pace should be.
Wonderful battle for the lead, but Damon Hill is lapping nearly a second faster than race leader John Lacey in the Ferrari. And he's catching now. He's behind Brundle. He's past Wendlinger. Damon Hill is up into 10th position. Ahead of him, there is Martin Brundle, 9th. Ricardo Patrese, 8th. Mark Blundell, 7th. Gerhard Berger, 6th. Schumacher, 5th. And you can see Schumacher now in your picture. And he is right up behind Prost. Here they are. And as Jonathan has said, it's Jean Lacey's race in terms of pace at the present moment. All of them are looking for an opportunity to get past the man in front, but the man in front in every case is very, very good indeed. Jean Lacey, of course, in the Ferrari with the V12 engine, and that car is getting better and better as the fuel load goes down and lightens the car with its V12 engine. And Michael Schumacher there in 5th position has got the extremely light and short Ford V8 engine behind him, and he will be carrying less fuel than the others. And here they come, completing lap 9.
Now the man who should be able to get by is Prost, really, because he does have a pretty major horsepower advantage, probably 50, possibly 70 horsepower with that Renault V10 engine, and he's got Hakkinen in front of him with the Ford V8. A less powerful engine, a well-balanced car, a very light, a very efficient engine, but nevertheless, Prost certainly does have a straight-line speed advantage over Hakkinen, and that should enable him to be the one man who can break through this. Lacey there, fighting with the wheel. He's really grappling hard. Great driving from Lacey, you know, with Hakkinen coming into the fray. We've got more really brave, courageous, hard-charging drivers at the front, and that has to be great news for the racing.
With Ayrton Senna following the Ferrari of Jean Lacey, who has yet to win a Grand Prix. 3 times in his career he has finished in 2nd place, including that incredible race in Phoenix in America when he actually led Ayrton Senna when Lacey was driving for Tyrrell. And now we're looking back from Senna's car at Mika Hakkinen, looking forward now to Jean Lacey's Ferrari. So that gives you a very clear picture, and that is the Italian driver Emanuele Naspetti out of the Jordan, and that is the first retirement of the race. And it's Naspetti's first race for Jordan, so it didn't last very long indeed. And we're on lap 10 now with 25 runners left. Lacey is on his 11th lap, 7/10 of a second ahead of Senna, who is 6/10 of a second ahead of Hakkinen. Prost is just behind the Finnish driver. Schumacher is just behind Prost. Gerhard Berger is in 6th position, and Damon Hill is still stuck in 10th position behind Martin Brundle, because he's got past the lesser men of Grand Prix racing at the moment, which doesn't mean to say that they're not very good indeed, but he's now up to the real hot shoes. Brundle, Patrese, Blundell, Berger, Schumacher, Prost, Hakkinen, Senna and Lacey.
Yes, I think it's going to be very difficult for Damon to get right up with the front runners in this race, certainly not until the latter stages. We are seeing now just how difficult it is to overtake, even with cars like Prost's Williams, which is more capable in terms of lap times, although not a great deal than Hakkinen's McLaren. Now, Damon is now up behind Brundle, whose Ligier has the same Renault engine. Then he's got the Benetton of Patrese, and then the Renault engine Ligier of Blundell. So, you know, he's going to have his work cut out now. Fortunately for him, we do have a Lacey still holding up the queue of traffic. The only thing that we do have in the way of the gap extending is the fact that Berger is holding up a similar queue of traffic. So we've got a Lacey holding up 4 cars, and then we've got Berger holding up, then behind him Blundell, Patrese, Brundle and now Hill. So Ferrari's at the head of 2 queues there.
Yes, but Jean Lacey has actually pulled away, and you can see the reason why. The fastest lap, 1:18.8, and that is 2.2 seconds outside the lap record held by Ayrton Senna, and that is Pedro Lamy, the Portuguese driver. He's in 16th position, but Lacey had certainly stretched out another half second over Ayrton Senna. And Jean Todt, who is the Ferrari team chief and who only joined the team recently from Peugeot, where he had taken them to stardom in sports car racing, is of course here. It's the last race with the Ferrari team for Harvey Postlethwaite, their chief technical man next to John Barnard. And Harvey Postlethwaite is returning to the Tyrrell team from which he came to Ferrari. And Jean Alesi is leading Ayrton Senna by 1.1 seconds. He's the fastest man on the track at the present moment. And Damon Hill is still in 10th position. And we're now riding with Alain Prost, or were, 4th position.
Now, we've had our first proper overtaking manoeuvre of the race when Mark Blundell has gone by Berger to take 6th place. That's going to be good news for Blundell. Now, what will be interesting to see if he can now close up behind Schumacher, who is probably some 7 seconds ahead at the moment. Clearly, it's going to be an important race for the Ferrari team to try and keep ahead with Alesi. He's doing a sterling job, and what this does show is just how very, very important the start of the race is. All the hard work that goes into qualifying can just evaporate away with a stall, as with Hill, or indeed can be capitalised on, and with Alesi get to the front of the queue. And we're now 12 laps into the race, and he's still very much in command.
And Ayrton Senna obviously following his usual policy of pressing hard, trying to make the man in front make a mistake. Jean Alesi, of course, knows that Ferrari perfectly. Damon Hill has passed Brundle and is up into 9th position. But he is now in amongst the traffic, and he's lapping slower than Jean Alesi with that fastest lap of his, 1:18.7. Damon Hill's last lap was 1:20.1. And you're watching 3 times world champion Ayrton Senna driving for the last time but 2 for McLaren, because whilst he hasn't made his future clear, he has announced that he's not going to be driving for McLaren after the end of this season. And everybody is assuming, correctly or incorrectly, that he's going to join Williams and take the place of number 2 there, Alain Prost, the 3 times world champion who has announced his retirement after Australia. It really does seem too much of a coincidence. But as ever, in Portugal, there has been an enormous amount of politics raging in the background, with rumours that McLaren are trying to recruit Michael Schumacher. And Mika Häkkinen, that you're watching now, who is in 3rd position, is not doing himself any harm at all at the present moment.
Now, what Senna really needs to do now is keep the pressure on Alesi. He's got to hope that by doing that, he can provoke the Ferrari driver into taking more out of those tyres with that heavier car than he needs to. There's Prost right up behind Häkkinen there, and that looks like a Tyrrell that's off. It looks like the Cesar is pulling off there, perhaps a mechanical problem, but back to Senna. He's really got to pressurise Alesi. Otherwise, the way things look at the moment, he's not going to have a chance to get by until the first pit stop. Now, we thought they were going to be between lap 25 and lap 30, but certainly if this crocodile of cars carries on, people are going to be making pit stops earlier, and we could well see Senna come in by lap 20, I would say another 7 lap time, possibly even before that, if he thinks he's losing that much time.
Well, there are the first 5. I wish we'd stayed with the shot a bit longer, because you would have seen Gerhard Berger coming round in 6th position in the Ferrari, and he is the next target of Damon Hill, and Berger is notoriously difficult to get past. And Blundell is in 6th position, and Damon Hill has got past Gerhard Berger. I can tell you that. You didn't see it, but Damon Hill is now up into 7th position from 26th on the grid. And the Englishman is proving in Portugal, just as he did in Italy, that he's a fighter and he can cut his way through the field. He did that in Portugal because he passed the 2 Ferraris of Alesi and Berger. He didn't pass Schumacher because Schumacher retired, but Damon Hill went through to win in Monza, and he knows there's an enormous amount depending on this race, nothing less than the World Championship. Because if Damon Hill can beat Alain Prost, the World Championship will still be alive. What we don't know, of course, is whether there are team orders and whether Damon will obey them. I know he was debating with himself, and I talked to him as recently as this morning.
Well, I think there probably are some team orders there, Murray. As I understand the situation, the drivers, the Williams duo of Hill and Prost, will be left to race between themselves, certainly up until the first pit stop and quite frankly towards the later stages of the race. But I know that Renault are very eager to have a French world champion, and for that clearly means Prost, and I think we could expect to see Prost, if he can do, certainly winning the race, finishing ahead of Damon Hill to allow Prost to take the championship with a win. Now there was the locking brake there of Häkkinen actually coming back to that power system that they've got, as Prost is really all over him. So I think we can probably expect to see, if the Williams duo are at the front, Prost in the later stages being allowed to take a win. Now this is a chance for Prost to go by.
And the Frenchman attacks. He's attacking for third position. And this is the master strategist, the Professor, Alain Prost, who's forgotten more about racing tactics than most drivers put together ever knew. And now he's going for Mika Häkkinen. He probably saw the Finn lock up his brake. Now, Mika did that several times yesterday in practice. I spoke to him about it. And in that very clipped English of his, he said, no problem, I fixed car. Well, he's fixed the car well enough for him to be holding third position. And I remind you that Mika Häkkinen has not driven in a Grand Prix since this time at this circuit last year. He's done thousands of miles of testing for McLaren, but testing and racing in the heat of competition are two very different things. So, third, fourth, fifth together. Now I'm just waiting to see Mark Blundell come through in the Ligier, which incidentally is the leading passively suspended car. He's gone through, he's 11 seconds behind. He's only 2 seconds ahead of Damon Hill, who is fighting to get into the points. Damon Hill is 7th, Berger is 8th, Patrese is 9th, Carl Vendinger Sauber is 10th, followed by Derek Warwick 11th and J.J. Leto Sauber, which is 12th. As you watch the race leaders, and they're on lap 17 out of 71. That is Alain Prost. 51 times a Grand Prix winner. He needs to win this race to clinch the championship, to be absolutely sure about it. There is an enormously complicated series of alternatives about what happens in the World Championship, depending on the places of Senna, Prost and Damon Hill. But Prost is going for that victory. And Damon Hill is going faster and faster. He's just gone round in 1:18.2 on his 15th lap, and that is the fastest lap of the race. And now 1:17.931, faster still, and that is 1.7 seconds off Ayrton Senna's lap record from last year. And being on lap 18 out of 71 means there's still quite a fuel load on. And I remind you again that this whole complexion of this gripping Portuguese Grand Prix, round 14, could change when the tyre stops begin. And they will likely start any time after lap 20.
Yes, I can see Senna coming in fairly soon. The McLaren is normally relatively light on tyres, and in fact, I think it's a great credit to the team now with two really first-rate drivers. We can see with Häkkinen in the car just how competitive the McLaren is, and Häkkinen has really made a massive difference to the team, partly because of his own pace in itself, and he's clearly a second or so, second and a half faster than Andretti, but partly too because he's undoubtedly pushed Senna. And to have Senna for the first time has actually been out-qualified by his own teammate for 2 years, and perhaps even more significantly than that, I believe that the events that we've seen with Häkkinen outpacing Senna both on the first day of qualifying and the second day of qualifying are one of the most remarkable things that's happened in terms of driver performances in probably the last 10 years of Formula One. With Senna, we have somebody who is regarded by many as being the best ever in Formula One. Certainly one of the fastest, well, certainly the fastest. And yet Häkkinen, in his first Grand Prix with McLaren, has actually pipped Senna, albeit by a tiny margin, but he's pipped Senna on both qualifying sessions, and Senna really has not had any problems, and that will undoubtedly have rattled Senna. Indeed, he went off this morning, he went off in the warm-up, likely damaging the car. It certainly put the pressure on, but what it's also done is really re-motivated the entire McLaren team. They've had a difficult year with Andretti, and Häkkinen is such a joy to work with, and he's such a lively individual, so fun. He enjoys his motor racing. It's great to see him going well.
Well, you can bet your boots that Alain Prost in fourth position is not playing a waiting game. He wants to get past Häkkinen. He wants to get to grips with Senna. He wants to get ahead of Jean Alesi and to lead the Portuguese Grand Prix. But what I'm asking myself, Jonathan, is Ayrton Senna playing a waiting game? Is he trying just to wear Alesi down? Is he hoping to pass him when they come in to change tyres? Or can we really expect the Ferrari to stay out in the front?
Well, I'm quite sure that Senna has largely given up any hope of being able to outrace Alesi at the moment, literally come in his toe and pull out alongside and go by. He certainly won't stop trying, but he's going to need a little mistake from Alesi, really, on that last corner. If he can get a mistake from Alesi, he can be close enough coming onto the main straight to toe up and come alongside. If that doesn't happen, all he can do is really keep a waiting watch, as he is now traffic. Now, that's the sort of thing which could give him an opportunity. That's coming up. That's Alboreto, I think, in the Lola. Now, as we get more traffic, this could provide an opportunity for Senna to go by, as Alesi might hesitate somewhere. Now, if neither of those scenarios occur, i.e. traffic or a mistake from Alesi, and Senna's engine's gone, and Senna has blown up. Ayrton Senna is out of the race.
Senna blows his engine or whatever on lap 20 and is out of the Portuguese Grand Prix, and that of course has completely destroyed any chance that the Brazilian might have had of winning the World Championship this year. It's now between Alain Prost and Damon Hill, and since Damon Hill is behind Prost, Hill is actually up into 6th position because he's passed Mark Blundell. He's come up from 26th to 6th. The race order now, Alesi is leading. Hakkinen has got to take up the challenge for McLaren because he's second. Prost is in third place. We're riding with Schumacher in the Benetton, who is fourth. And he is 12.5 seconds ahead of Damon Hill, who is lapping only a fraction faster than him as Alesi comes in for tires. And Mika Hakkinen. Now, this is going to be critical. These are the first two cars, and McLaren are famous for their absolutely lightning pit stops. And Alesi holds up his hands, and let's see the time. 4.8 seconds. That is marvellous. So, Jean Alesi is out, and I'm looking down the pit lane, and Hakkinen is right behind him. Oh, this is marvellous. Jean Alesi leads on lap 21 out of 71, and Hakkinen challenging for the lead. So Alain Prost leads now. He's gone through. He hasn't changed tyres, but now this battle between Mika Hakkinen and Jean Alesi might even decide the race if Alain Prost has a slow tyre stop.
Well, that was just the kind of result that Hakkinen did not want. He was going to use that early tyre stop to try and get ahead of Alesi, who was holding him up. So that's why he's being so desperate now. That's why he's really challenging hard to get by, because if he doesn't achieve it now, and frankly it looks as if he won't, then he's going to be left with the same situation that Senna's just been enduring and have to follow the Ferrari along. Now he's having another go now. No, it's the sooner that Alesi's tyres can get fully warmed up, and Hakkinen too, and I admire Hakkinen for having the confidence to go so hard so early. He's not used to putting on new tyres midway through the race, as Schumacher then comes into the pit for his set of tyres. Clearly everybody now going for that first tyre swap. Just reflecting back to Senna there, I'm quite sure that his efforts to pressurise Alesi had nothing to do with the engine blow-up. Pretty good stop for Benetton, 5.3 seconds. That Senna's engine blow-up was very uncharacteristic. The Ford V8 does tend to be very reliable, and it must be just bad luck because the engine certainly shouldn't have been stressed. These semi-automatic gearboxes now do mean that by and large the engine should have no chance of being over-revved.
Well, Michael Schumacher, that we're riding with after his tyre stop, was in second place when he came in, but now Damon Hill is second, but neither he nor Alain Prost have changed tyres. Prost is leading, Hill is in second place. Schumacher has dropped down the listings. I can't tell you exactly where until they come round to complete another lap. But Mark Blundell is right up there because he got ahead of Jean Alesi when the French Sicilian came in to change his Ferrari's tyres. And of course Mika Hakkinen has gone down to 6th position behind Jean Alesi, and only just behind because he's trying to saw the Ferrari in half with the nose of his McLaren as Alain Prost goes through, and he is the race leader, and he's now on his 23rd lap out of 71 and will be with a comparatively clear track in front of him, seeking to build up a lead. And as you can see, he's now the fastest man on the track. That's the fastest lap, 1 minute 17.5. Damon Hill is 14 seconds behind him in third position. So the Williams are first and second. Michael Schumacher is 7 seconds behind Hill. He's third. Alesi is fourth, with Hakkinen right behind him. Fifth and sixth position is Mark Blundell. Then it's Gerhard Berger, Patrese and Wendlinger. Tyre changes could still decide this race because Prost and Hill have yet to make theirs. Lap 23.
Yes, tyre wear on this circuit has been relatively light, and it was almost possible, or it is almost possible, for a team to go right through on one set of tyres. Now, having said that, I very much doubt as to whether or not Prost will elect for that choice, because he will definitely be in a conservative sort of approach at the moment. He won't want to blow his chances. But had he not been championship chasing, there could be some logic now for a driver in Prost's situation to try and make that gamble to go through on one set, because we've seen how difficult it was for a Lacey to be overtaken, and the same would apply. And even if Prost stayed out on one set of tyres, and their performance dropped off towards the end of the race, he could probably hold up the queue of traffic behind him to take a win. But of course, the big risk is whether or not that set would actually last the distance. And if it failed early, as we've seen with Damon Hill at Hockenheim, and as we've seen with Nigel Mansell at Adelaide a few years ago, then his championship challenge certainly wouldn't be over, but he wouldn't clinch it here today.
Well, it's going to be a desperately close run thing, because Prost is 15 seconds ahead of Hill, who is 4 seconds ahead of Schumacher. And when they come in, there is absolutely no doubt that Damon Hill will lose his place to Schumacher. And it's quite conceivable that Alain Prost could lose the lead and let the German in the Benetton through. Lap 24 out of 71. Prost that you're looking at leads. Hill is second. Schumacher is in third position. Alesi is fourth. Hakkinen is fifth and Berger is sixth. Riccardo Patrese is in seventh place ahead of Wendlinger eighth. Derek Warwick and Johnny Herbert are ninth and 10th. Barrichello and Mark Blundell are 11th and 12th, and Martin Brundle is in 14th place with Pedro Lamy, the Portuguese driver in the Lotus, in his second Grand Prix in front of him. And you're watching race leader, 3 times world champion, Alain Prost, and he's coming up now to try to get past Aguri Suzuki, who is in the footwork car. He is 19th.
It's the man who's really got the pit stops right, and indeed the team that have got the pit stops right then, albeit slightly potentially coincidentally, is Benetton with Schumacher. Schumacher, who's actually managed to overtake both Alesi and Hakkinen by doing that less than brilliant pit stop. A 5.3 second stop was slower than we think than both McLaren and Ferrari, but nevertheless he's got into the pits faster, he got out of the pits faster, and he's got ahead of Alesi and Hakkinen. Now, I think it was very unfortunate for McLaren and Hakkinen that they made their decision to stop. I'm quite sure independently they did not know that Alesi would come in early. I'm sure that McLaren felt Alesi would continue out there and that Hakkinen could dive into the pit, capitalise on the situation and get out ahead, and perhaps that Alesi would stop a few laps later. And I'm sure that Hakkinen having to follow Alesi in cost him time and cost him the opportunity to get ahead.
Well, Alain Prost on his 25th lap is where he wants to be, with a 15-second lead over his teammate, who, if team orders apply, as we expect them to, will not be challenging him. But Prost has still got to make that car stop. All is fairly quiet in the Williams team area, because as you can see, Prost has just gone through to complete his 25th lap, and the excitement at the moment is not Prost and Hill. The excitement is Hill and Schumacher, because Prost is holding his lead, but Schumacher is cutting great lumps out of Hill's lead ahead of him. Hill in second place. Schumacher, I remind you, on less worn tyres. He's changed his, whereas Damon Hill hasn't. And the lead has come down. Damon Hill in second place over Schumacher in third to under 2 seconds. Jean Alesi is fourth, and he is 5 seconds behind Schumacher, and only 3/10 of a second ahead of Hakkinen, who is fifth. And into the pits comes Riccardo Patrese, the veteran Italian, and Patrese was in 7th position, which he will lose. Crackerjack stop from the Benetton team, under 5 seconds. Lap 26. Well, all quiet just for the moment.
There's certainly going to be frustration, I'm sure, from Hakkinen now. He's being held up, as before, by Alesi. He's just 0.3 of a second behind, lapping in a 1 minute 18.0. Meanwhile, ahead, Schumacher, who has clearly, with his team, got that Benetton going better, is pulling away. He is some 5 seconds ahead of Alesi, lapping half a second faster. And Hakkinen, without any doubt, will believe that he should be right up there, battling with Schumacher, because this weekend, the McLaren team, certainly so far, the McLaren team have been quicker than Benetton.
Well, we're riding with Mika Hakkinen now. The Finn in the McLaren is in 5th place, and the car that you see ahead, of course, is that of Jean Alesi. As carving his way past the Lola goes Damon Hill, and he's now 20 seconds behind Prost. It's not that Damon is less competent at the moment. It's certainly not that the car is not as quick. The difference is that Damon Hill is having to slice his way through the traffic. And you can see that Schumacher is right behind him now. And he's lapping faster, of course, to close up. The gap was 3 seconds only 2 laps ago. And you can see for yourselves what it is now. Benetton have rung the bell, have got the answer, have got the car balanced properly and handling well. They've actually been experimenting with 4-wheel steering, the latest technical suite, which will almost certainly be outlawed next year when the final package is evolved. But Schumacher now is on the rear wing almost of Damon Hill in second place in the Williams, but Damon is certainly not going to yield that place easily.
Yeah, I think we can expect to see Damon coming into the pits for his second set of tyres soon. Schumacher is clearly capable of lapping faster. The Williams has been superior, as it has been so often. But Damon might just keep out there for a few laps to see how long he can keep Schumacher slightly held up. And in the same way that Alesi's been able to hold up everybody behind him, Damon on his more worn tyres can probably hold up Schumacher for a few laps, and that can only help Prost.
Yes, of course, Alain Prost with a 20-second lead over this battle for second place now is benefiting from every split second that Damon Hill can prevent the German from saving. And Alain Prost will be looking to be able to come into the pits, change his tyres, get away cleanly, and we'll all be looking to see whether he can do just that. I mean, get away cleanly, because it wouldn't be the first time that he's failed to do so if he didn't.
Yeah, the team tactics were really going to come in here. Prost at the moment enjoys a 19-20 second lead over Hill. He needs that to be more like 25 seconds, possibly 27, to afford him the luxury of coming in for a pit stop and, providing it's good, getting out in front of Hill. And of course Hill now holding up that queue of cars, Schumacher, Alesi, Hakkinen, etc. Now if that can occur, if Prost can get into the pits and get out in front of Hill, he will then be on a fresh set, and it should give him a pretty good chance of going off into the distance and then winning the race. Then Hill, having done had done a tremendous holding up job, will then come in for his set, accept the fact that his own performance has been compromised, but been happy perhaps to help his teammate Prost on this occasion.
Well, on this lap that's just finished, Damon Hill that you're looking at, car 0, the Williams Renault with the Englishman at the wheel. He has not held up Michael Schumacher any further. The gap is 20 seconds, just a whisker over. And the two cars, Hill and Schumacher's, Williams and Benetton, are lapping just 0.6 of a second slower than Alain Prost, with John Alesi dropping back a bit. He's in fourth position, having led the race right the way from lap 1 through to lap 20. A brilliant performance. It was his car stop, of course, that lost the lead for him. And into the pit comes Johnny Herbert. Their helmets are almost identical. Lami's is pink and Herbert's is red, but Johnny Herbert leaves by just under 6 seconds. He was in 11th place, but he will have lost it because Carl Wendlinger was just behind him in the Sauber, and Derek Warwick was only about 6 seconds behind, and Alain Prost is in the pit. So you could be seeing the race lead up. Now there is Prost. This isn't bad. Oh, and Alain Prost faltered there, and I saw smoke coming from the back of the engine. That may well have been from the brake discs or even from the exhaust or some other factor. But Alain Prost exits the pit, and this battle for second place is now raging very much closer to the Frenchman, of course. So, there, Hill and Schumacher. Very much the traffic. They are 6 seconds ahead of John Alesi, who is in fourth position. There's Ayrton Senna's car parked by the side of the road. The Brazilian having retired yet again from a Grand Prix, and that was the 6th time he had done so. And that footwork there is the car of Aguri Suzuki, the Japanese driver. And Hill and Schumacher are now coming up to Andrea De Cesaris in the Tyrrell. And Tyrrell, he's in 19th place. That doesn't matter so much. What does matter is Andrea De Cesaris going to let them through? He doesn't always do that. He's much better now than he used to be. But if he balks Damon Hill, it could let Schumacher through, and then the German could be on a charge to try and take the lead.
Well, I must say I'm a little surprised that Williams didn't use that opportunity to allow... Oh, Hill has apparently pitted. We have just learned Hill has pitted. But had that carried on, I think Hill could possibly have held up Schumacher for another 3 or 4 laps, maybe gaining a second a lap, and that could have given the chance for Prost to get in and out on his own.
And Schumacher is in the lead. Michael Schumacher leads now. He's gone through. He's on his 31st lap as Damon Hill sprints out. I didn't get the lap touch. His stop time, I was too busy looking at other things and talking about Schumacher, who you look at now, and he is up behind Andrea De Cesaris now. So there is the Italian, who had a very rowdy evening at the table next to me in the restaurant we ate at last night, and he's now well on his way, fired up as he was yesterday evening. So De Cesaris, who is in 19th place, is just ahead of the new race leader, Michael Schumacher, on lap 31 with another 40 laps to go in Portugal. Great race. Schumacher, Prost, Alesi, Hakkinen, Hill is the order. So Damon Hill down to 5th position after his tyre stop. And there is only 7 seconds covering the first 5 places on the 31st lap. And there's Schumacher. Behind him you see the Williams. Now Schumacher needs to get past the late De Cesaris, where with the German he pulls out. He goes alongside the Tyrrell into turn 1. There's a 4.8 G side force on him there. Now down to turn 2, it's 4.9 there. Now into turn 3, which is where Prost went off yesterday, round that at 70 miles an hour. He's coming up behind one of the Minardis. I think it is Fittipaldi, the Brazilian. Yes, it is Fittipaldi, and Fittipaldi is in 17th position, up to turn 5, 165 miles an hour. Still accelerating, 6th gear, 180 miles an hour. Now down to 3rd for the 70 mile an hour left-hander, turn 6. Now in the very short distance between when I say now and when I next say now, he will be up to 165 miles an hour and down to 70 now. That's how quickly they accelerate and decelerate these Grand Prix cars. Up to turn 8 at 150 miles an hour. Michael Schumacher leading. Alain Prost by 2.5 seconds. Prost is 2.7 seconds ahead of Alesi, who is 3rd. In the pits is Pedro Lamy in the Lotus. And Schumacher is coming through to complete his 32nd lap in the lead, having changed tyres, as has Prost, as has Hill, as has Alesi, as has Hakkinen and Berger, and they are the top 6. And here they come. Schumacher. Behind him is Fittipaldi and De Cesaris, who are fighting for 17th place and holding up Alain Prost as they do so. And Schumacher is stretching his lead. It's 3 seconds now. This brilliant young German, he was in the depths of despair yesterday evening. He stayed with the mechanics until 2 o'clock this morning whilst they worked on his car. He's had 5 second places this year, but he hasn't won since Belgium last year, his sole Grand Prix victory. And this is only Schumacher's 36th Grand Prix. And he finished 16 of them on the rostrum. In 16 of his 35 Grand Prix, his first 35 Grand Prix, he has been in the top 3. A quite incredible performance. Well, there's all sorts of rumours about Benetton next year too. The rumour I told you that McLaren have tried to take Schumacher from them, as you watch the German. The rumour that they might have Renault engines, that they might have Peugeot engines. It's all mystery in Portugal, and it won't be resolved until the end of the season. As Michael Schumacher now comes up to Pedro Lamy. He is in 16th position. And Prost pulls out and passes De Cesaris, and that's Hakkinen. Mika Hakkinen, that is exactly to the inch where and how Senna went off this morning. And that means to say, of course, that both McLarens are out. Happily, Mika Hakkinen is perfectly all right. Well, if Ayrton Senna can make that mistake, certainly Mika Hakkinen, with far less Grand Prix experience, can do it. There's a replay.
There you can see Hakkinen get wide on that corner. He launched himself into the tyres. He's then clearly bounced off the wall on the right-hand side of the circuit. That was a much more dramatic version of Senna's accident. It was nothing like a severe. Clearly Hakkinen then running wide on the exit, and it might just have been that Hakkinen was trying to get as close as he could to a Lacey. He was only 0.2 of a second behind the previous lap to get that overtaking maneuver. Here we are, looking very close behind a Lacey. He gets wide, he's lost his front downforce. Watch some tyres. The car goes up in the air as he hits some tyres on the left-hand side, now into the Armco on the right-hand side. The back hits there, the front wheel comes up, lucky not to hit him on the head, and going back off. Now, it has to be said that's a driver error. It was a mistake by Mika Hakkinen, but mitigating circumstances were the fact that he was trying to get right up behind a Lacey. He had the frustration of being behind him and having Schumacher, who's been quicker than all weekend, disappearing, albeit slowly away. He got too close, he lost his front downforce, the car literally ran wide, he lost his steering control, and then obviously had the accident. A great shame. It's been a tremendous weekend so far until that point for Mika Hakkinen, but as we all know, it's the race itself which is the most important point.
As we watch Riccardo Patrese, I don't wish to be depressing, but I hope they're not going to stop the race with Mika Hakkinen's car actually on the track and very close to the entrance to the pit. That, as I said, is exactly where Ayrton Senna went off this morning, coming out of that 160 mile an hour long right hand at the last of the track, turn 11. And as I said, there's about 4.8 G-force there. I suspect that Mika Hakkinen just lost downforce, tucked up behind Jean Alesi's Ferrari, and lost control of the car. And of course, at that speed, once it goes, it goes. And there's the answer. The marshals are dragging the three-wheel McLaren as much as they can off the track and up to the arm curve.
Well, I really don't think the red flag will come out. They're pulling the car out of the way. It's pretty far off the racing line. But it could well be, actually, that an aggravating situation here, or contributory factor, perhaps I should say, to Hakkinen's mistake, is the fact that this is probably the most physically tiring Grand Prix circuit on the calendar. This long succession of 180-degree corners, you've heard the high levels of G-force, mean that it is very, very hard physically. Indeed, over half of the lap is spent with more than 1 G of cornering force. And when you think that your own road car, driven absolutely to a limit by a racing driver, wouldn't even generate 1 G. It really is very, very demanding. And Hakkinen, whilst he's done a lot of testing for McLaren, has not, he told me this morning, has not actually completed a full race distance. So just maybe fatigue came into the equation.
Into the pits comes Alesi. I have an uneasy feeling that here comes Berger. Gerhard Berger in 7th position behind Martin Brundle. I have an uneasy feeling that the producer thought we were watching Schumacher when in fact we were watching Patrese, because the German, Michael Schumacher, is still in the lead and he's now 6 seconds ahead, and that is that is Berger, straight out of the pits on cold tyres.
Yeah, a big mistake by Gerhard Berger then. Too much power, cold tyres. Even though these tyres are warmed in their blankets, they are still not at operating temperature. Out of the pit lane, spun it. In fact, he was very, very lucky then not to be collected by another car. That was pure chance. We may get a replay, and we should see him spearing off from your left-hand side. There he is. Look at that. Missing Derek Warwick there by fractions. Now, that really will have given Derek a massive scare. Probably all over far too quickly for him to really think about. But sadly there, Alesi going tremendously well, it has to be said. Just to be 8 seconds behind the leader halfway through this race is Ferrari's best performance yet. And it also has to be said that Alesi has consistently outperformed Gerhard Berger this year. Berger has not been as fast, and he's also been he's certainly been less lucky. Now here we are. Now he's coming out of the pit lane, hard on the power. That was simply too much power, lost the back end. Clearly his traction control system not saving him on that occasion, and Berger out of the race.
Yes, in mitigation, I have to say that a lot of Berger's poor results in comparison with Alesi this season will have been because of his very painful elbow injury. Here's a replay, and as Jonathan said, he just gave it too much welly too soon as he came out of the pit lane. Missed Derek Warwick, who's now got up to 8th position by a hair's breadth, and this is the result.
Yes, I think in some minor defence of Gerhard, you saw the car bump at the back end. The exit of the pit lane is bumpy. In fact, the whole circuit used to be very bumpy, and the resurfacing has helped that. And it may well have been that the bump just aggravated the situation, being hard on the power. Gerhard is that kind of driver. He's the kind of driver who takes the car by the scruff of the neck, he throws it around. He's certainly not intimidated by the 750 horsepower of these cars, but on this occasion, maybe he was a touch too aggressive.
Well, for some reason, we continue to watch 10th place man Riccardo Patrese, whose teammate, Michael Schumacher, is now leading Alain Prost by 4.4 seconds. And take no notice of the caption, incidentally, my theory is right, the producer thinks we're watching Schumacher when we're in fact watching Patrese, the Portuguese producer here in Estoril. And Michael Schumacher is 4.4 seconds ahead. Now, I have a theory I'm going to try out on you, and the theory is that Alain Prost, who knows that if he finishes ahead of Damon Hill and Ayrton Senna will win the championship, is not challenging Michael Schumacher for the lead now. He would be quite happy to yield another victory, and that is Rubens Barrichello coming in the George with a very umpty left rear wheel. As I was saying, my theory is that Alain Prost would be happy to yield a second victory to Michael Schumacher in the German's career in return for the 6 points that Prost would get, which would enable him to finish ahead of Damon Hill. Ayrton Senna is out of the race, his only other challenger. We certainly cannot expect a team challenge from Damon Hill now. And the race order on lap 39 out of 71 is Michael Schumacher, question mark on his way to his second Grand Prix victory in the Benetton. It would be a just return for all the work that they've put in over the last 3 days. Alain Prost is actually closer. He's 3.4 seconds behind now. He's 11 seconds ahead of Alesi, who is third. Hill is 16 seconds behind Alesi in fourth position. Mark Blundell is in sixth position in the Ligier. His teammate Martin Brundle, who is just coming into the pit, is in sixth position and about, I think, to lose that place because Carl Bendlinger will go up into sixth place as Martin Brundle completes his power stop, 7.32 seconds, and now we are with race leader Michael Schumacher, the young German, in the Benetton Ford, lap 39.
I think his theory is pretty good there, Murray, actually. I think that Prost will not be in any mood to muscle his way past Schumacher. He is closing. He's only 3.5 seconds behind now as he goes. There's Prost there going behind by those black markers. But I'm sure that with some 32 laps to go, he will hover perhaps a second or so behind Schumacher, waiting to capitalise once again on any opportunity. It could just be that Benetton could make a further tyre stop. I somehow doubt it if they are out in front, but they have had a tradition, or certainly an occasional habit, of making 2 tyre stops and hoping to benefit performance-wise. However, as we said, being in front is not the time to do that, so I suspect that Prost will hover behind, and reliability permitting, that could well mean that Michael Schumacher takes his second win of his career.
Well, I talked to somebody in Benetton yesterday when they were having their dreadful problems, and Michael Schumacher was only 12 fastest in the warm-up this morning. And he said, we have a problem, but we don't know what the solution is because we don't even know what the problem is. And they were trying to find that out. They seem to have found the answer from the way that Schumacher is going. He's lapping about half a second slower than Alain Prost at the moment, but as you have seen, he's facing traffic. He's on his 40th lap now, and I'm just trying to work out who he is behind. I suspect he's getting pretty close to his teammate, Riccardo Patrese. But they go down to turn 1, the 4.8G, fifth gear, 135-mile-an-hour corner. Start dropping downhill. That is where Philippe Alliot went off some years ago and nearly took Nigel Mansell with him. And it was actually Pedro Lamy in 13th position in the Lotus. And the Lotus has had considerable handling problems here too. We thought they'd overcome them at Monza, but they certainly don't seem to have overcome them in Portugal. So, Michael Schumacher concentrating on keeping cool, maintaining his rhythm, keeping out of trouble, is now 7.5 seconds ahead of Alain Prost, who is 9 seconds ahead of Alesi third, who is 13 seconds ahead of Hill in fourth place, and into the pits to make his tyre change comes fifth place Mark Blundell. His teammate Martin Brundle changed tyres on the previous lap. It's normal for one man of the team to come in on one lap and his teammate to come in on the next one.
Certainly normal though that is, I'm not quite sure why both Ligier cars have made their pit stop so late. Normally one makes a pit stop in the early stages. The only thing is it may well have been their second change and we missed the first one, which again would be a tactic that we know that Benetton have employed. But clearly the fuel load is heavier with these cars right at the beginning of the race. That's when tyre wear is heavier too. And that's why the pit stops tend to come at about 35-40% distance. Now we've talked about the fact that Benetton seem to have really made a great recovery, and that was like a Lola out of the race there. Benetton have made a great recovery from an incredibly frustrating practice of qualifying, a warm-up session. Schumacher's been spinning off left, right and centre as the team has struggled to find some grip with the car. But what has been a shame is that we really haven't had the chance to see just how much they really have sorted out. Their arch rivals, McLaren, have both been out, Senna with the engine, Hakkinen by crashing, and that has meant that together with the fact that Lacey was holding up that queue, including Hakkinen and Senna, we haven't really had the chance to see how the Benetton and McLaren are matched. And at the moment it looks that, bearing in mind the championship situation, Prost there in second place, that Schumacher, he's actually pulled out a 6-second lead over Prost now, who looks perhaps to have stabilised the situation, although Prost may well be being very cautious when it comes to lapping the back markers. And who can blame him? There's the Cesaris. Clearly that was Katayama, in fact, who obviously retired with his Tyrrell right in the early stages.
Yes, and Michele Alboreto has spun out too, as we go backwards with the winnings momentarily. But now on lap 43, the gap between Alain Prost that you're looking at in second place and Michael Schumacher, the race leader, has settled down to about 5.5 seconds, notwithstanding the fact that Prost has just made the fastest lap of the race, 1/10 of a second outside the lap record, still held by Ayrton Senna. And not only is Prost on target for his fourth World Championship by staying ahead of Hill and with Senna out of the race, but Damon Hill is consolidating for second place in the World Championship that he took from Ayrton Senna at Monza, because Hill is in fourth position on 3 points and Alain Prost on 10 points, and that means to say that Hill is going to have that extra advantage over Senna.
Yes, and there's indication of the real fight on the track at the moment. Hill setting a new fastest lap, 1 minute 16.2, as he closes up on Jean Lacey in third place. He's some 10 seconds behind at the moment. He's reeling a Lacey in at about 2 seconds a lap. He's then got the challenge of getting past a man that nobody else has managed to so far, and that'll be fascinating to see how that works out. And Lacey himself being some 12 or 13 seconds behind Prost there in second place.
Andrea De Cesare is having a very sticky pit stop. His left rear literally stuck as he slid almost sideways into the pit, making it very difficult for his mechanics to line up the tyre changing equipment. We're on lap 44 now, 71 lap race. Schumacher 6 seconds ahead of Prost, and Lacey is third, now 9 seconds behind the Frenchman. Damon Hill is in fourth place. Don't forget the two Ligiers have been in to change tyres. Wendlinger therefore is up into fifth position, and in sixth position behind him, I'm just checking on whether it's Derek Warwick or whether one of the Ligiers just managed to scramble through. And I'll tell you in a few moments when they pass our commentary box. But meantime, that is Prost. And as you can see, the gap has stabilised, and Wendlinger is in fifth position in the Sauber. And they went extremely well in the warm-up too. They qualified extremely well, the two Swiss-based Sauber cars, the team heavily backed by Mercedes-Benz. But Mark Blundell is in sixth position, Derek Warwick is seventh, JJ Leto is eighth, Patrese is ninth, and Martin Brundle, after his car stop, has dropped down to ninth position, Leto being eighth. So Schumacher in amongst the traffic, and he's up now behind the Ligier of Martin Brundle, who is in 10th position. Now
here's just the kind of frustrating situation that Schumacher's going to have to work hard to get by. He's gone past, no, he hasn't gone past the Ligier, because he will know only too well that Prost is just 5.5 seconds behind. And whilst Prost won't take too many chances, he will be very quick to capitalise on any gap that's left. And it's very easy for a gap to occur in this situation, because in one's effort to get by traffic, you may have to lift off, you may have to try the right or the left, and that can often mean leaving the door open up the inside for someone like Prost to come through and steal the place into confusion.
Now Brundle, Leto and Patrese, and Schumacher's in amongst them, are fighting for 8th place. They're naturally keeping their eyes on each other and not expecting someone to come up and lap them, because they're pretty quick runners. But that is exactly what Michael Schumacher is doing. He's on his 45th lap now. He's closing up on Riccardo Patrese, who is in 9th place. There is Riccardo. Behind him is Schumacher are going through. Now the next target for Michael Schumacher, who has passed Riccardo Patrese, is J.J. Leto's Black Sauber, which is in 8th place, and then Derek Warwick, who is in 7th, as Eric Comas holds things up in the La Rousse. Now there's Warwick, there is Leto. Schumacher cuts through and gets past Eric Comas, who is now holding up Riccardo Patrese, and J.J. Leto is the man to watch. 8th position, the Black Sauber. Into the pits comes Alesi for tyres. This is Alesi's second tyre stop. He's obviously decided he can go faster on newer tyres.
Yes, and what's great news about that is that means that Damon Hill now has a clear run at Alain Prost. Hill had closed up to within 6 seconds in 2 laps of Alesi. He's now some 23 seconds behind Prost, and we shall really see Hill having a charge now, determined to prove that team orders there may be, but he's still determined to really prove that he's the fastest man there.
Now, in the pit lane, ready to talk to me is Mika Hakkinen. Mika, you drove brilliantly in practice and the warm-up. You drove brilliantly in the race, but you lost it. What happened?
What happened, I was following Alesi quite a few laps, and then Alesi started to pass in lap marker, and I have a very good chance to pass him in the straight. Well, to start him passing me on the straight line. What happened, because I was so close, I lost downforce completely. I slide on top of the curve, and you know, in those speeds, when you go top of the curve and on the cross, you know what's going to happen then.
Well, that's what we suspected happened, Mika, but you were driving in your first Grand Prix since Portugal last year. Did you feel comfortable in the race? You certainly looked it.
It was brilliant. I didn't have a physical problem. Car was good, and it was a shame what happened. I'm really pissed off, but I'm looking for the Japan. I'm sure we're going to do well over there, and we have a good balance now in the car. I'm looking forward to Japan.
So are we, Mika. You made your name today, and I'm sure you're going on to even better things. But meantime, Michael Schumacher, the race leader, who's now only 1.7 seconds ahead of Alain Prost, who is 20 seconds ahead of Damon Hill in 3rd place, Alesi 4th, Bendinger 5th, Mark Blundell is in 6th place, and Schumacher desperately needs to get through this traffic. It's J.J. Leto, number 30 in the Black Sauber, who is holding him up in 8th position. And on the previous lap, you probably saw Schumacher trying to get through here, and he was stopped by Leto, and Alain Prost has taken advantage of that to close up to less than 2 seconds, as Schumacher again tries to go past J.J. Leto, who's got Derek Warwick ahead of him. Warwick is 7th, Leto is 8th. Schumacher there, number 5, is the race leader. We're with him here, coming up to turn 5 at 165 miles an hour. Then up to 180, down to turn 6. Look for Alain Prost in the background because he's not far behind. And Schumacher again has a look, and again the gap narrows. There's no way that even Michael Schumacher can scramble through that.
No, J.J. Leto is there, really should be letting Schumacher through. He should know who's behind him. He doesn't have any right to keep closing the door like that. Indeed, Leto has been somebody, interestingly, who's definitely been fired up by the efforts of his compatriot of Hakkinen there. Leto, a fellow Finn, has really performed much better this weekend than he has of late. Pity that his current driving, this is a chance where Schumacher needs to be right behind him, even a back marker, to come up behind him. To get that toe down the straight has a chance of going by into that first corner. This is what Schumacher must do, but unless Leto cooperates a bit more, he may not even get by now.
And Patrese is behind Schumacher, and right behind Patrese, and looking to pass, and doing so now is Alain Prost. Alain Prost is in 2nd place. He's got past Patrese. He can now see Michael Schumacher, the race leader, in front of him. The gap is only 1.2 seconds. We're on lap 49 out of 71. And is Alain Prost going to keep on? Of course, he's just lapped Riccardo Patrese, but he's got to catch now, and there's not very far for him to go in terms of distance. The yellow and green Benetton ahead, that of Michael Schumacher, race leader.
Now this is, there we go, there's Prost coming by to tuck in right behind Schumacher very shortly. Schumacher being held up, one presumes still, yes, there he is, by Leto. This is just why people like Leto ought to let Schumacher by. Prost is now right with him, and anything could really happen now, depending on what kind of gaps Leto leaves. They're coming onto the main straight. We know that the Williams car has got We've got one more corner to go. The Williams car has probably got another 5 or 3 miles an hour top speed over that Benetton. Now this is critical now, because this is where Prost needs to tuck right up behind Schumacher on the final right-hand corner. We're too close to see, unfortunately, but he looks pretty good from here. This is going to be a bit of a traffic jam. No, he's not close enough to get by, there's no doubt about it.
And Schumacher furiously waving his hand at J.J. Leto, who doesn't see him or chooses not to see him, and yet again Schumacher's Benetton is jammed behind the Sauber. Incidentally, hats off to Leto and the Sauber and its Ilmor engine, because they're going quick enough to hold off two of the quickest men in Grand Prix racing, Schumacher and Prost. Now is Schumacher going through? Well, we move. No, the answer is it's up to turn 5 again. And Alain Prost is almost ideally suited now. And if Schumacher tries to go the wrong side of Leto, it could allow Prost to dodge to the other side and get through and take the lead on the 50th lap with 21 laps still to go. Followed by Damon Hill third, Lacey is in 4th position. And what a battle at the front.
Absolutely. I suspect here that what's going on is that Leto thinks it's Patrese behind him, not Schumacher. It's probably difficult. The helmets are different, but not that close. And he may well be oblivious to the fact that it's Schumacher there. He's had the blue flag. He ought to know, but then he might get the blue flag if it was Patrese. He shouldn't do with good marshalling, because the marshal should know the difference between somebody who's lapping and somebody with whom one is merely racing. Now, Prost, he's too far behind, unfortunately, here. Certainly for himself, if not Schumacher. And again, Schumacher can't get by that Sauber. Sauber using the latest version of the Ilmor engine, and you can see there's not much wrong with that. The way that the Sauber straight line speed is certainly every bit a match for the Ford V8. That's the V10 Ilmor engine in the Sauber. And what one has to hope at this stage is that Schumacher cannot afford to get too wild, and Prost is right with him, and risk actually having his nose taken off by a closing of the door from Leto. That's a big problem now for Schumacher.
I'm sure you're right, Jonathan. J.J. Leto is adopting the Maginot Line policy. They shall not pass. And they, in his mind, are Riccardo Patrese and his Benetton. And once again, up to the left-hander, approaching turn 5. Schumacher shows his nose to Leto, who sees the yellow and green, probably thinks that's Patrese, refuses to move, and Schumacher is through. Schumacher is through. Now is Prost going to be able to follow him? Now you can see already that Schumacher is fairly legging it away from the Sauber. It's just as though you've taken a cork out of a bottle. He's shooting away, and Prost matches him. Rev for rev, wheel turn for wheel turn. Lap 51, 20 to go. Schumacher looks as though he's pulling away from Prost a bit, but the camera lens can make things look very distorted. We'll see now.
Yes, meanwhile, whilst all that's been going on, Damon Hill has set a new fastest lap, 1 minute 15.5, and is now just 14 seconds behind Prost. So with he's closing on another 1 second a lap. Within another 14 laps, we're going to have a real battle for the lead on our hands. Schumacher is going to have to really prove how quick he and that Benetton are, whether or not they have really improved the car, or whether or not now that they've both got a bit of clear road, although there's traffic again, there's Derek Warwick, Schumacher going inside Derek Warwick, to see how these two really compare on pace.
Yes, but Derek Warwick didn't let him through. Derek Warwick is in 7th place, and he also may be thinking that Schumacher is Patrese. It doesn't really matter because the German is past now. So Michael Schumacher has lapped everybody up to 6th position. 6th is Blundell, 5th is Fendlinger, 4th is Lacey, 3rd is Hill, 2nd is Prost. The race leader is Michael Schumacher on lap 52. And it doesn't matter about telling you what the gap is in terms of time, because you can see on the track what it is. And I continue to wonder just how hard Alain Prost is going to try to get his 52nd race victory of his career and his 8th race victory of 1993. What he wants is to stay ahead of Hill. He's already ahead of Senna, who's out of the race, and to win the World Championship, and that looks like Mark Blundell. It's Mark Blundell's Ligier. He's gone off. He was in 6th position, and that means to say that Derek Warwick moves up into 6th place. And here is a replay. Oh! Well, that's the reason. Now, who was it who hit Blundell? I was busy looking at the Ligier. Blundell out of 6th position. Well, I can tell you that Schumacher, Prost and Hill are now on their 43rd lap as a disconsolate, if that's the correct word. Mark Blundell shaking his head. He's obviously put out about having lost what he regarded as his corner.
Well, obviously bad news for Blundell. It looked to me as if he was trying to come up the inside of a Lotus there from the little bit we could see. Blundell went off this morning in the warm-up, and of course he did so at Monza. And in the battle for keeping his place, oh, here we are. Now, here we are with Blundell, I'm sure. That's coming down into, yes, there he is, up into the air. Sadly, we still don't see for sure who it was, or we might get it. No, well, that was a shaking, yes, it was a shaking fist on the way. Clearly felt he was squeezed far too much there, and he was almost certainly lapping the Lotus there, so every reason to feel aggrieved on that. But back at the front, we've now got the chance to see that the cars really performing without being held up by anybody else, because we've got a 16.7 from Schumacher, a 16.9 from Prost, and a 16.4 from Hill. Very closely matched now.
And the car we believe that he hit was Carl Wendlinger. It was Carl Wendlinger who was in 5th position, and Wendlinger has adopted some fairly robust tactics in Grand Prix lately, and may well be the object of some scorn at the end of the race. But that means to say now that benefits Derek Warwick, because with Wendlinger and Blundell both out, Derek Warwick will be up into 5th place when he passes the pits next time. Damon Hill is now fastest on the track. Schumacher on his 54th lap that you are looking at, followed closely by the 2nd place man, Alain Prost, who is pressuring the German, trying to make him make a mistake. Prost is 2nd. Hill is in 3rd position, and Lacey in the Ferrari is 28 seconds behind. Hill is the fastest man on the track, and Derek Warwick is up into 5th position ahead of J.J. Leto.
Yes, with just 18 laps to go now, I'm quite sure we are in for the closest Grand Prix finish for a long, long time. We've got Prost just 1 second behind Schumacher, shadowing him all the way, with Hill closing, setting new fastest laps all the way, now just 9 seconds behind. He will almost certainly be right up with Schumacher and Prost, with Prost not wanting to force his way past Schumacher, and yet with Damon wanting to be right behind Prost at the flag.
Damon is actually lapping marginally slower than both Schumacher and Prost as he completes his 54th lap, and Alain Prost sitting comfortably, and that is J.J. Leto, 10-second penalty. J.J. Leto taking a 10-second penalty.
Yes, that's undoubtedly for holding up Schumacher there. That was obviously didn't go unnoticed by anybody, and that will penalise him a great deal.
He was in 9th position, and he was 7 seconds ahead of Johnny Herbert, so that means to say that Herbert should have gone through up into 8th position. And there's Mika Häkkinen. Just saw a bit of a television interview with him, and now we're back on lap 55. This is the battle for the lead. Is Michael Schumacher going to win his 2nd Grand Prix? Is Alain Prost going to win his 52nd Grand Prix? Wherever the Frenchman stays, 1st or 2nd, he's going to win the World Championship if he completes the race, and they complete another lap, which is their 55th.
Well, it looks to me like Prost is charging hard and is determined to get ahead of Schumacher. He needs to be right in his shadow, again waiting for mistakes. I think it's going to be difficult for him to overtake unless Schumacher does make a mistake, but it's going to be very important for him to get right up behind again on that last corner. And it's going to be a situation here where he's going to be very much praying that his engine keeps in one piece. And just reflecting back to the last Grand Prix at Monza, according to Patrick Head, they don't really know what went wrong with that engine. It was in so much shrapnel that it was very hard to tell. But really, these engines are incredibly highly swift. Now Prost really is forcing his way very hard here, and he's definitely looking for a way by.
Now, Prost is not a statistically minded chap, but it might be that at the back of his mind he would like to beat the greatest number of Grand Prix won by anybody in a season, which was Nigel Mansell's 9 last year. Prost is on 7. If he wins this, it would be 8. And there are still the Japanese and Australian Grand Prix to go to complete the 16-race season. Anyway, that's just a theory. This is lap 56. This is the battle for the lead. We are with Alain Prost. Ahead is Michael Schumacher. Benetton Ford holding off Williams and Renault, and Prost needs to be much closer to the yellow and green car ahead of him if he's to dive through for the lead on turn 1, which they're into now. And they're doing 165 miles an hour, believe it or not, as they go into turn 2. 170 up to turn 3. Hard on the brakes. Damon Hill is still slower than both of them, but he's still in 3rd position on 9 World Championship points.
Although Damon Hill is indeed slower, as you pointed out, Murray, I think that the traffic is the reason for that, and that once Damon gets clear of that traffic that did hold up...
Prost attacking! Prost attacking. You can see that for yourself. And there's no doubt that the Frenchman wants to win the Portuguese Grand Prix. He's showing no quarter to Michael Schumacher, but the young German is incredibly cool. He's race experienced now. This is his 36th Grand Prix, and as I told you before, he's finished 5 times in second place this year. He will be delighted that the car is going as well as it is after the troubles he had qualifying Friday, Saturday, and the warm-up this morning, and he'll be going for that win just as much as Alain Prost is. This is lap 57. Well, we're into lap 58 now because they're crossing the starting grid. And the time was 1 minute 16.2. They've slowed up very slightly compared with the previous lap. I'm interested to see how Damon Hill's time compares and to whether he's carving into their lead. They've lapped everybody up to Wendlinger. I'm a bit confused, frankly, because we're seeing Wendlinger on our lap chart. I didn't see him go past. I was sure that was the man who'd gone out. But now, anyway, this is the lead. Now, are we going to get a change? Because Schumacher has Prost, dives to the left, dives to the right. Schumacher is going inside Eric Thomas's Larousse, who is in 15th place, to lap the Frenchman again. And Prost will be looking now to see whether Schumacher makes a slip. Well, the answer is that Wendlinger's car was undamaged, which is more than you can say for Mark Blundell's car, which is stuck in the gravel. Wendlinger is in 5th place, did manage to get going again, and is ahead of Derek Warwick, who's continuing in 6th place to fight Riccardo Patrese and Martin Brundle, and less than 2 seconds covers the 3 of them. Now, here is Alio, not Thomas, Alio about to be taken. Yes, now is Prost going to get by? If he doesn't get by, this will be a big help to Schumacher, because Alain Prost has got a tricky time now to get past the Larousse Lamborghini, and this is going to give Michael Schumacher the opportunity with a clear track in front of him. Here's a replay. Alio in the yellow and blue Larousse. Out from under his wing comes Michael Schumacher, passes the Frenchman, and he should have eased out a bit of a lead now. He's crossed past. So this is lap 59. My goodness, this Portuguese Grand Prix has certainly flown by. And thus far this season, we've had McLaren win 3 races. We've had Alain Prost for Williams win 7. We've had Damon Hill for Williams win 3, making 10 in all. Are we going to see a new constructor winning a Grand Prix here in Portugal? It would be jolly good for the sport if it did, and if it was Benetton. And if it is going to be that, it's certainly going to be Michael Schumacher, who's coming up to compete his 59th lap. And as you can see, he's now up behind one of the Lola Ferraris. This may well be their last Grand Prix. We don't yet know whether they're going to spend the money to go to Japan and Australia, with the knowledge that they are parting company, Lola, Ferrari and the Scuderia Italia, at the end of this year. So Prost goes through. Well, he hasn't really lost much time. So he's back with Michael Schumacher, continuing to press. As I've said before, Alain Prost is the thinking man's Grand Prix driver. He's quiet, he's smooth, he is immaculate, he has this wonderful flowing style. He has a computer-like brain when he's in the car. He will be sizing up every eventuality. But hats off too to Michael Schumacher, who at the age of 24 is driving an absolutely magnificent race, having fought his way up from 6th on the grid with that tyre change, and then to take the lead at under half distance and stave off everybody. And on lap 60 now, with 11 to go, Schumacher, Prost, you can see them in the same picture. Hill is 13 seconds behind. Alesi is 17 seconds behind Hill. Wendlinger is 5th. Warwick is 6th. Patrese is 7th. Brundle is 8th. And Alain Prost is again right up on the gearbox almost of the Benetton Ford.
Yeah, it seems that it's very difficult for Prost to be really close enough through that final corner, and unless he is certainly within about 3 or 4 car lengths, then he really has not got a significant chance of going by. So he's probably going to have to wait for another attack to really charge on some more traffic ahead of him. He's going to have a good chance of getting by, but a good chance to reflect too on what an outstanding performance it will be if Prost. And he's having a look at the outside. He can use that straight line speed advantage of the Williams there to pull up behind the Benetton, but he can't quite get enough advantage to come up the inside. Now here we have a back marker. Now this may well produce an opportunity for him to have another go.
Well, we don't know what's going on in Prost's mind. He could be saying to himself, remember, Alain, second is good enough for the World Championship for the 4th time. Or he could be saying, I want to go out here in Portugal, my last race in this country, in a blaze of glory by winning here again, as he did in 1984, 87 and 88. But it was misfortune for Damon Hill at the beginning of the race when he did what his teammate has done as Schumacher goes through and passes Christian Fittipaldi's Minardi Ford. Damon Hill stalled his car on the start of the parade lap, had to start from the back. 26th, has fought his way up into 3rd position, but I can't see him going any further up unless Schumacher has trouble.
No, that back marker didn't help Prost at all. Schumacher got by at the ideal time down the straight, losing him no time whatsoever, whereas Prost lost a little time. But again, just reflecting on the enormity of Prost's likely achievement here. If he can win a 4th World Championship, that will put him just second to Fangio, who won 5 in the very early days of World Championship Grand Prix racing in the 50s when it just began. But Prost at the moment is one of 5 drivers who won 3 championships. The Senna, Jackie Stewart, Jack Brabham, Niki Lauda and Nelson Piquet, and of course Alain himself. That's 6 in total. But if Prost can win the championship, and he's almost certain to do so, that'll put him right up behind Fangio, winning 4 World Championships, and arguably in an era with the contemporary racing when it's been much harder to win championships. There have been many more cars competing, much closer racing, generally many more closely matched cars. And I think it's a great tribute to Prost. While he undoubtedly is in the best car of the field at the moment, then in many years, in fact in most years, the world champions have indeed been that. And for Prost to be in the best car means that he must have had something special about him to be sought after and to be offered to drive in the first place. And I think we really are seeing the final year, because of course Prost has announced his retirement at the end of the year, the final year of the Professor, as he's known, a very distinguished driver, great amount of style to him. And indeed, I actually spoke to him just before the race and said, you know, why are you retiring? And clearly wants to retire on top. He'd love to retire with the World Championship, but he also, I feel, has been worn down by the politics, by stories from the press about different drivers. There's talk of, and that looks like Herbert.
It does look like Herbert. It also looks like Lamy, because they're it is Johnny Herbert. It's Johnny Herbert, and now you see Andrea De Cesaris, and ahead of Andrea De Cesaris, behind Andrea De Cesaris is Pierluigi Martini, and there is Pedro Lamy in the 2nd Lotus. So once again, the unfortunate Johnny Herbert has gone out, and we're now on lap 63 in this 71-lap race, and Pedro Lamy goes out on the following lap. What a disastrous couple of laps for Lotus, with Johnny Herbert going out, and then an almost carbon copy repeat of what he did from Pedro Lamy, who clearly just lost. They've had a lot of trouble with the rear end of the car in practice, and it just goes loose. They get substantial oversteer. Well, this is oversteer gone mad, because it's a 90-degree, almost 180-degree turn that Pedro Lamy takes, spins out of the race, and we're now, as someone else losing. Oh, this is with Pedro Lamy's car. Replay.
And that is, in fact, exactly where Alain Prost crashed in the 2nd qualifying session. A pretty extraordinary thing for Prost to do. Indeed, Lotus have had problems on both occasions, on both cars here. As you were saying, Murray, they really have not been able to get the right setup with the car. It hasn't gone the right way at all for them. But just to briefly back to Prost there, I think he's definitely been destabilised by the talk about Senna going to Williams, and I think also he feels that some of the judgments against him from FISA when he was penalised both at Monaco and at Stonington, and particularly, of course, at Hockenheim too, with that stop-go penalty, he felt it was a little unjust. But I think the combination of all those things, perhaps the most important one, certainly one hopes that he'd like to leave Formula One on the top and on extraordinary top of 4 World Championships.
Well, you're watching in the closing stages of the race, Michael Schumacher leading. This young man who started his career in kart racing in Germany, where he was the German champion. Then he became the German Formula 4 champion. Then he became the German Formula 3 champion. I remember vividly at Macau in 1990 when he beat a disconsolate Mika Hakkinen and then went on to win the Formula 3 race at Fuji in Japan before he joined the Mercedes-Benz sports car team after one Formula 3000 race at Fuji in Japan, where he finished in second place. And Schumacher showed his class with Mercedes-Benz, who poured money both into the team and him. He won one of the sports car world championship races. Then he was spotted by Eddie Jordan in 1991, had one race, or part of one race, because he burnt his clutch out at Spa, having started 7th on the grid from his first Grand Prix, Pedro Lamy walking in. And then Schumacher was absorbed, shall we say, by the Benetton team. And a year later in Spa, last year, he won his first Grand Prix. And since then, oh, Patrese off, and a furious Derek Warwick walking towards him, looking very menacing. I wish we'd had a bit more of that shot. So Ricardo Patrese's fault, whatever, he locked up, and he was 7th and Warwick was 6th, and there is Warwick. I'd like a word with you, Ricardo. So he is livid. Now, Patrese has got a sort of body language, I'm sorry look about him, yes. Not that being sorry is going to help Derek Warwick very much, and that means to say now that Martin Brundle in the second Ligier, his teammate Mark Blundell having gone off. You remember he had a coming together with Carl Wendlinger, who is now in 5th place. And the race order on lap 66 out of 71 as we ride with second place man Alain Prost is Michael Schumacher ahead of us there. Prost is second. Hill is now only 8 seconds behind, and he's shattered the lap record. 1 minute 15, he's taken 1.2 seconds out of it, and he's only 8 seconds behind Alain Prost in 3rd position. And in 4th place, it is Jean Alesi in the Ferrari. 5th is Wendlinger. 6th is Brundle. 7th is Leto. 8th is Martini. In 9th position is Fittipaldi in the Minardi. 10th is Alio. 11th is Comat. And 12th is Andrea De Cesaris. And I think offhand that's the highest, no, not quite the highest that the Tyrrell has ever been. I think De Cesaris finished about 10th in Monaco. Now, replay.
Yes, here we are now. That's looking from behind, looking at Patrese, locking up all 4 wheels, a hopelessly optimistic manoeuvre. Derek committed to turning in a certain amount to keep him off the marbles, and Derek Warwick would have dearly loved that 6th place and has every reason to feel very aggrieved. Nobody else had tried to overtake there. The 2 cars were very evenly matched, and it was never really going to be on. Damon Hill now 9 seconds behind. There are only 5 laps to go now, and I think he's going to have to work extraordinarily hard, and I don't think he's got the chance to do that. Well, I'm sure he can work extraordinarily hard, but I don't think he can close that gap, because Schumacher and Prost are both lapping in pretty much about the same time. When traffic allows, Damon's able to put a spurt in and break the lap record, but I don't think that's going to happen often enough, certainly in Damon's advantage alone, for him perhaps to be right up with them at the very end.
Well, we were watching that replay from Mark Brundle's Ligier, who benefited from Patrese and Warwick going off to move up 2 places into 6th position. Martin Brundle, who is in 6th place in the World Championship at the present moment. Another point for Ligier to take them towards their full season target of 30. Well, they're now on 22. They might just make it in Japan and Australia. But now we are on lap 78 in what has been an absorbing, exciting race as Schumacher the leader and Alain Prost in respectively the Benetton and the Williams bear down on 2 cars, one of which is Andrea De Cesaris, and he's battling with Eric Comat, and we may have them concentrating on each other and not on the battle for the lead, which is coming up behind them. We'll soon know. We're on to lap 68 now. So 68 now. There is De Cesaris in the Tyrrell. And behind him is Fittipaldi. Behind Fittipaldi is Schumacher, who is passing the Brazilian. Now, is Alain Prost going to get past? No, he's not. This is a big help. So Christian Fittipaldi unwittingly has been of enormous assistance to Michael Schumacher, who now passes Andrea De Cesaris as Prost passes Fittipaldi. And Prost has still got to pass Andrea De Cesaris. This has been a useful breathing space for Michael Schumacher on lap 69 out of 71. So just the 2 laps following this one, and another lap record for Damon Hill, who is now only 6 seconds behind Alain Prost. 1 minute 14.859. That's 1.5 seconds faster than the previous lap record held by Ayrton Senna. Are we going to see a grandstand finish? Is Alain Prost going to attack in the closing couple of laps, or is he going to be content to metaphorically coast? My goodness, it's lightning fast compared with anybody else, but Prost is totally in charge of himself and the car, and we're on lap 69.
Well, Schumacher now looking pretty much under control. I really don't think Prost will have a chance to get by. Benetton have done a brilliant recovery from their troubles in practice, and their tactics on the pit stop worked very well indeed to get ahead. Prost too has driven a faultless race, it has to be said. You know, he's driven with typical canny precision, and again I think his characteristic in not forcing his way past Schumacher typifies the way he's gone about his career, and perhaps a very just way of winning his World Championship. Damon Hill, a brilliant recovery from him. From that stalled start, comes carving right through the field to get back up to 3rd place. Whilst Lacey too, I think, is just worthy of reflection that the Ferrari hasn't been competitive as late. In a Lacey's hand, he's forced it by, and he's done a great performance, a great job there with 2 pit stops tactics there. We've still got Prost not being able to get by. And then perhaps just a thought for the McLaren duo. Senna was in 2nd place, of course, right up there behind Lacey when his engine went, and Hakkinen, I'm sure, whilst he made a mistake, and there's no doubt about that, we're going to see a lot more of probably, I think, the most likely man to displace Senna from being arguably one of the best in the world. Hakkinen will certainly be a big talent for the future, I think. And by the way, I think we can probably also expect to see, in the wake of Prost's retirement, Senna and Damon Hill continue at Williams next year, although neither has been confirmed at the moment.
Well, Alain Prost is now about to start his last lap, a last lap which could give him his 4th World Championship. I don't think he's going to attack Schumacher, but Damon Hill is less than 5 seconds behind his teammate now, and goes through to start his last lap. The Ultima Volta, this is the last lap in Portugal. Michael Schumacher looks as though he is on his way to a famous 2nd victory to give Benetton their first win of 1993. And this would be the first car other than a McLaren or a Williams to win in 1993. So this is turn 5. Now this is down to turn 6. They're about halfway round the lap, rather more than halfway now. And we'll see what Prost's intentions are as Schumacher comes up to pass that test. Hey, Prost is attacking. My goodness, he's not giving up. He is going to go for the lead. He is pushing Michael Schumacher. And the man they passed, I think, was J.J. Leto in the Sauber. But Michael Schumacher is almost home now. He's coming up to the long right-hander, turn 11. This is the 135 mile an hour, 4.8 G corner, and Schumacher wins in Portugal. Michael Schumacher wins. Alain Prost is 2nd and the world champion of 1993. A 4th brilliant championship for the Frenchman. And Damon Hill is going to be coming home in a superb 3rd position. He has done so. So Williams have added yet more points to their Constructors' Championship total, and they've already won the title. And their driver has now won the title. Alain Prost will be able to go to Japan and to Australia with a clear mind, really fighting for the remaining 2 wins, which could make him the Grand Prix driver to have won the most races in one season. And it looks to me, with him stationary there, as though he may well have run out of petrol on the end of, oh no, he stopped for a flag. Stopped for the French flag. Well, this has become a tradition. We've seen Ayrton Senna driving home with the Brazilian flag. We've seen Damon Hill driving with the Union Jack. Now we see that very proud Frenchman, Alain Prost, who is propelled by a French Renault engine and fueled by French Elf Petroleum, waving the tricolour as he drives home. Unfortunately for Michael Schumacher, there doesn't seem to be a German flag on the side of the course that he can stop and collect. But it was victory in Portugal for Michael Schumacher, and that will help him in the championship. He's now only 1 point behind Ayrton Senna. Schumacher in 4th place, Ayrton Senna in 3rd position. Damon Hill has extended his lead in the championship, his 2nd place lead in the championship over Ayrton Senna. And of course, Prost now with a total of 91 points has clinched his 4th World Championship in the magnificent career that Jonathan Palmer was so eloquently talking about earlier on. And as you see, Leto in 7th place, but the full finishing order at the Portuguese Grand Prix, race 14 in the 16 race series, victory for Michael Schumacher by less than 1 second ahead of Alain Prost. Damon Hill in the 2nd, Williams 3rd. John Lacey brought the Ferrari home, having led the race in 4th position. Carl Wendlinger takes another 5th position for the team. It's their 2nd of the year. Martin Brundle, a point for Ligier and himself, 6th position. The 2nd Sauber of J.J. Leto in 7th place, so 5th and 7th for the Swiss constructor. 8th, the doughty little Pierluigi Martini in his Minardi. And 9th, the man who drove into Martini as they crossed the line at the end of the Italian Grand Prix 2 weeks ago, Christian Fittipaldi. 10th, Philippe Alliot in his Larousse. 11th, his teammate Eric Comas. 2 finishes for the Larousse team, well deserved. Andrea De Cesaris, 12th for the Tyrrell team. Rubens Barrichello, 13th for Jordan, and in 14th place, the Italian Luca Badar, 3 laps behind the leader. Well, certainly a memorable and exciting Portuguese Grand Prix. And Alain Prost, a wonderful day's work done, drives his Williams into the Parc Fermé, where it will be very carefully scrutinised by Charlie Whiting and his team to make sure that it confirms with the regulations, as I am sure it will. And you just saw the constructors' points there, with Williams now on 149. They've massively extended their lead. Benetton, of course, are continuing, as they very much hoped they would, to stay ahead of McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. That's been their target all season, and although the McLaren team closed the gap between themselves and Benetton, it wasn't enough. So, Michael Schumacher crosses the line. A famous victory for the young German, only the 2nd in his career, but I'm sure that there will be many more. And he was, as I say, just under a second. You can see Alain Prost Williams behind. It's interesting to wonder whether Alain Prost, if he decided he was going to win, could have done so.
I think it's difficult to say clearly, because we will never know quite what would have happened in that situation. But, I think it would have been very hard for him to do so, Murray. We watched how Senna tried to have a go at getting by Lacey, and without much success. And I think this is a sort of circuit which is very difficult to overtake on. That corner we could see at the top of our picture. There's a Lacey congratulating Prost. Of course, they were at Ferrari together a couple of years ago. That last corner, it's very difficult to be close enough to be in the tow, in the slipstream, down the straight and get by. And I suspect, even had he wanted to, and having said that, I think he probably did want to get by him anyway. Those last few laps, he had a few quite vigorous attempts when he thought he had half a chance, but clearly finishing with his car in one piece and not risking any kind of damage must have been foremost in Prost's mind.
Well, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Anybody who thinks that the interest has gone out of Grand Prix racing now that the championship has decided should certainly think again. I seem to remember saying the same sort of thing after the Hungarian Grand Prix last year, when Nigel Mansell won the championship so convincingly. But we've just seen Michael Schumacher win. There he is, as ever. I mean, this young German is unbelievably, depressingly fit. We had a cycle race at Silverstone before the Grand Prix there, and Michael Schumacher arrived late in his natty gents shiny shorts, got on his bicycle and pedalled off into the distance and blew everybody off. Now he talks to Alain Prost, and I foresee a great battle between those two and between Damon Hill. The Ferrari has gone much better here. Let us not forget how brilliantly Mika Häkkinen drove. Ayrton Senna will want to win again for McLaren before he does whatever he's going to do in 1994, be it for Williams or wild rumours for Ferrari. But there's a lot of good racing left for us to see in Japan, and of course the last, and for many people the best Grand Prix of the year, at Adelaide in Australia.
No, I'm quite sure that's right, Murray, and whilst here it would seem that team instructions, team directives did not play any part because of qualifying. The fact that the McLaren looks as though it's more competitive than ever. Senna's being pushed by Häkkinen. The Bennettson's obviously on form. Ferrari coming along. The whole thing looks like really becoming a very, very exciting, very competitive end to the season.
And a few words about Damon Hill. I remind you that 2 weeks ago in Monza, having been conclusively biffed off the circuit by Ayrton Senna and then hit as he rejoined it by Gerhard Berger, he drove through from 9th to win. Here, all right, he didn't start properly, but he started 26th instead of from pole, and he finished in 3rd place behind his teammates, and they now climb the podium with a very, very happy Michael Schumacher embracing Flavio Briatore, the boss of the Benetton team. Very good. I enjoyed that.
Yes, we are staying for the press conference, so stay with us live here on Eurosport, where we're going to hear the experiences of Mr. Schumacher, Prost and Hill. And applause for, of course, the new Formula One world champion, Alain Prost. He drove very well, John, to start right at the back of the grid and finishing 8.2 seconds behind Michael Schumacher. Well, Flavio's having a shower.
Well, he's got a champagne shower, and he caught a bit unawares, but Damon drove an outstanding Grand Prix, having come back from the setback on the parade lap, and not disappointed, I'm sure.
Schumacher, Prost, Hill, that's the top three. That's the new world champion. Please rejoin us with the press conference after the break here on Eurosport.
Absolut richtig. Ich glaube, ein paar Worte in Deutsch wären jetzt nicht schlecht. Das ganze Wochenende so große Probleme. Es hat überhaupt nichts funktioniert.
Well, he said he's got a lot of problems during the weekend. It didn't work in qualifying. Instead of qualified sixth, it just didn't work.
Heute Morgen haben wir entschieden, das T-Car zu benutzen, und
this morning we said let's use a spare car, and the problem wasn't completely gone, but it was at least less. But it's a fantastic feeling. Second Grand Prix victory, and I really had to fight for this one.
Ein so großes Dankeschön aussprechen.
And thank you to the team.
So viel gearbeitet diese Nacht, bis heute Nacht 3 Uhr wurde gearbeitet.
They worked till 3 o'clock last night to get the car ready.
Ein fantastisches Gefühl, und überhaupt diesen Sieg erreicht zu haben. Wahnsinn.
Michael, reverting back to English, your second Grand Prix victory, and one which you had to work extremely hard for.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I can just say the same now in English, what I said in German. And I have to say, over the whole weekend, we struggled completely from the first day on. We changed things to the car, and we didn't improve the car at all. I have really to say we went the other way. And we could see the problems on the data, but we had no answer for it, and we couldn't fix it. And just today in the morning we tried both cars, I mean the T car and the race car, together, and I saw a big difference between the two cars, even there shouldn't have been any difference. And we just decided to use this T car, and you see we win the race. I mean, even in the worst dreams, I wouldn't believe before this race that I could have won it. And now I'm here. I won the race in a way I had really to fight for, and I'm more than delighted, really more than delighted.
Presumably stuck behind JJ later, you must have wondered whether there was a point where Alain was actually going to catch you.
Yeah, I mean, I knew I had about 5-6 seconds of gap to Alain. And I knew I just overtook Ricardo, so GG was probably looking in his mirrors and saw just the green and the yellow car, and couldn't make the difference who it is. And sure, everybody has to race, but I think maybe we should ask to the teams that they tell the drivers really something in the radio what they have to do. But I mean, in the end, he led us through, and I won the race. That is absolutely important, and nothing else.
Well, Alain, your day really, I suppose. Your 4th World Championship crown to add to those in 85, 86 and 1989. What are your feelings today?
I'm exhausted. Not because of the race. I mean, the race was hard as usual on this track, but there was a lot of pressure. The day started bad. I mean, started yesterday afternoon when I had a crash, and then this morning I did not like the car and the engine. I wanted to take the T car to the T car for the first warm lap, and then I changed back to the race car. I heard some strange noise on the engine, and then I did. After the start, Häkkinen pushed me in the grass, and I was 4th. And in fact, I was quite comfortable because Damon was far behind for the championship. But it was a hard race because I think I was. What Michael did was very good. I mean, he stopped very early for the tires, and as soon as he was ahead me, it was very, very difficult to overtake. We saw in fact, the limit of this regulation about the cars today, you know, especially on the aerodynamic side. Even if when we wanted to overtake cars with maybe 2 seconds, 3 seconds slower than us, it was very, very difficult to overtake. So you can imagine that behind Michael, I was quicker for sure on one lap, but it's very, very difficult to overtake. He did a good job, no mistake, and there's nothing to say. I mean, I was pushing hard anyway. I mean, I wanted to win the race, but I did not want to do something silly just to lose the points. I was thinking also about the championship. So I'm quite happy about the race, and for sure delighted about the championship. Especially now I'm going to go to Japan and Australia a little bit more relaxed, and I'm going to try to win at least one race before the end of the season.
We talk about the end of the season. You announced your retirement here on Friday. Somewhere in that heart of yours, is there not a burning ambition to defend your title next year, and also perhaps equal the record of Fangio with 5 World Championship titles?
No, I think I've announced that, and was really. I mean, I thought a lot about the whole year. For sure, it's up and down. You know, when you have to make a decision, when you win a race, or like today you win a championship, everything looks fine. But you must think also about the bad moments I had this year and in the past, and I just want to live. I mean, another way, and maybe think about something different.
Alors Alain, bravo en français, là c'est devant toutes les télés, quand même c'est bien que vous parliez en français. On vous avait expliqué.
Yeah, with a slim chance of wresting the championship from Alain. In fact, the warm-up lap really put paid to that. What happened?
We had a problem actually getting the thing started, and we were running out of time for the thing to fire up, for the car to get going. And in actual fact, the cars had started to leave the grid, and when we did finally get it started, I couldn't really hear what was going on. The cars going past, and I stalled the engine, so that compounded the problem and meant I had to start from the back. It seems to be a bit of a problem we've had with this year with getting the car off the line, which is a bit of a shame.
But from there on in, you set fastest lap after fastest lap in chase of 3rd place. It was an excellent race for you, in actual fact.
Yes, and I had nothing to lose, so it was quite fun to try and push and get as far as I could. I mean, I knew there was probably no chance of catching up with the leaders, but I was frustrated by quite a bit of traffic. You'd lose. It was very difficult. There's only really one place to overtake, and that was down the straight using the speed advantage. But I'd like to say that I've had a fantastic year, and that now that the championship is over, I'd like to congratulate Alain on a fantastic year, and also to Michael for winning the race. But I've enjoyed being a contender in the championship, and now we can look forward to 2 races where there's nothing but the race to win, and it should be very exciting racing from now on.
Okay, so 4 weeks to Japan. Who's going to win in Japan?
Be there.
One of the 3.
Thanks very much indeed.
Eurosport will be there. The next race in Japan. And John, I think it is going to be a very interesting Grand Prix there.
Traditionally, it is a difficult Grand Prix, but we've seen an immense excitement and also disappointment. But I think Damon's words were really prophetic, because now the championship has been decided, all the gloves can come off, and we can maybe see something very spectacular and very exciting in that Japanese Grand Prix, followed 2 weeks later by the final round of the 93 championship in Australia.
Anyway, this was the Portuguese Grand Prix. Alain Prost has won the World Championship. Michael Schumacher has won his 2nd Grand Prix of his Grand Prix career. The whole Eurosport team will travel to Japan, and of course we hope you'll be there when we have the Grand Prix live here on Eurosport. Don't forget, Wednesday night, a look behind the scenes of the Portuguese Grand Prix. But for now, John Watson and Allard Kalf, thank you very much for watching this afternoon, and hope you're with us from Japan. Bye for now. See you then.